And to everyone listening, I'm going to start introducing you to Michael because you can at least hear his voice. So that's a good thing, right? That's a good start. And I'm really pleased to have Michael here, I must say. Michael has been a wonderful friend of the Institute for Cybersecurity, IFCyber, and he has a lot of important things, I think, for us all to learn from the industry perspective. His talk today will talk to you a lot about his experiences with cyber and in recruiting the right people into cyber and how the challenges involved in doing that as well. What I really love about Michael is his passion for this area as well as his knowledge. That's why I'm very excited to have him here today.
So this topic's really talking about kind of untapped talent that maybe not is in our and that's why the topic untapped is really talent that's not in our current view or in our current pipeline, or that we typically recruit against. And I think why we're kind of talking about this topic is why this topic is quite important is, the shortages in the actual workforce at the moment. There is some stuff there is a report from Deloitte Access Economics saying that by 2025, which is not very far, we were going to need another 156,000 workers in the digital area. And, a lot of that's going to be obviously cyber, data analytics and cloud. So they're the big kind of groups of resource demands. To see if I can send you this, Monica, at the moment. So hopefully we can bring this up. So this is what I really wanted to have a kind of talk through, because this problem is, it's not going away. And there's a number of things that are driving this kind of this shortage. And some of it's obviously COVID's actually accelerated the drive to a digital enterprise. So it's quite interesting. I was reading an article about what's been one of the biggest drivers to get to a digital enterprise. And it really COVID actually has driven a lot of organisations to move and accelerate their online presence or their digital presence, and or even also kind of reviewing their back end operations to actually work out how they can actually make them digital. There's a compounding issue there's all of this is compounding. So we've got shortages in STEM graduates. We've got the lack of immigration and migration occurring. We've got also a growth of IT within the business. So what I mean by that is, again, back-end operations, or just us using more IT than we ever had before, like in accounting, procurement, client management, sales areas, and even just core businesses, so we can use kind of from using smartphones to using, even using sensors to go ahead and gather information. And then there's obviously a massive drive, which has probably been over the last kind of 10 years in the growth of consumer IT, which is like smartphones, gaming, and a lot of those things we now consume as entertainment for ourselves. If you think about now, we use platforms like Netflix, Stan, the Disney Channel. There's a whole bunch of other consumer-based IT that kind of sits around us consuming entertainment. So what I'm going to be talking a little, one of the things I wanted to a little bit discuss, and this is kind of takes the kind of the theme of it, is typically we look at human capital as people fitting into boxes called jobs that deliver tasks. And one of those things, we look at this box called a job description, and a job description will have a technical skills, people skills, education, hours that must be worked, and maybe the location. That role is actually anchored to, or that job is anchored. One of the things that's kind of what with COVID has done is actually busted that assumption about location, which is fantastic. But we're still on this traditional kind of looking at recruitment, being that we need to have people with these kind of technical skills, these kind of people skills, this education, and that will then just deliver a set of tasks. I think the real question we've got to ask ourselves is really what tasks need to be delivered, and then really looking at what do people bring to this kind of these sets of tasks. So start to look a bit more outside the box than now particularly our traditional recruitment. Even so, I don't particularly like to feel like I'm fitting in a box, and most people wouldn't fit in a box. So it's they all have, for example, you might find somebody who's more mature and aged worker. They might only want to work part-time. So they're very much focused on, part-time work. And so that's designing a job that really fits into with what they're doing. People that are culturally and linguistically diverse might have people skill issues. So we have to really adjust. I mean, is that really important to have people skill issues if we actually are really after a higher data analytic jobs, or somebody looking at hunt activities within cybersecurity? So we've got to really start thinking about what really do we need to do the tasks? And we started to kind of break down this idea that a job description, everyone must fit into this job description. So how do we actually find talent? We kind of untapped talent. Firstly, we need to engage the full population of Australia to find talent, and that's critical. We need to start looking at communities that we typically wouldn't be engaging with, and there's a number of those communities based on, it could be, for example, veterans. Have you engaged the veteran population, people leaving the Defence Forces and moving? Is that could be an opportunity. This could be people that are with disabilities, and I would call them, the people with abilities, not really just people with disabilities. So we have to look. We could be looking at people that it might be youth, so we're looking at people that are in that kind of just high school leavers. Instead of actually looking at leaving kind of a polytechnic or a technical college or a university, do we engage them at a younger base? Or another opportunity is mining the existing employee base for talent. So there's numbers of organisations are doing this across the globe, and I wanted to give you kind of a bit of perspective of what some of those kind of opportunities, some of those organisations are. And this is about broadening out the perspective of where a talent pipeline is. And obviously you can't see these slides, but what I had here was you've got GCHQ, which is the communications headquarters in the UK, which runs a lot of the intelligence. They're looking for people that are neurodiverse, or in this time, very much their focus is on people that are dyslexic. They've been very big in recruiting. The Israelis have been recruiting with teens and also young adults with autism, similar to NAB and ANZ Bank locally. JP Morgan Chase have been very big, probably the number one employer across America, looking at veterans. So they've been a very big recruiting of veterans, but they also have, which I've found very interesting, a number of reservists working in their socks, and providing work experience to reservists in some of their security areas. So they've kind of created a program very much focused on veterans. In Toronto, there has been a very much big push by the municipal council there to look at young workers into cyber. So they've been very much focused on youth. And what quite an innovative one was actually from Hewlett Packard Enterprises, who actually developed a cyber program for the Girl Scouts. And for the Girl Scouts, they actually get some patches, and as they progress through. So they've been very much big on actually building that pathway through. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of, of kind of ideas about, what people are doing differently to look at talent. So what's the kind of some of the benefits of diversity? And I think this really gets down to, it's addressing, immediately one is it helps to address skill gaps. We can actually, by going out a broader net, it allows us to go ahead and address skill gaps. We start getting diversity of thought, which is critical, which is, we start bringing new ideas, and people with different backgrounds and different ways of thinking bring a diversity that allows us to look at things very differently. It brings innovation, which is one of the other key things, by thinking outside the box or having somebody with a different perspective brings innovation. It also allows the organisation to have a relationship with the community. So organisations start to represent the community, which is great. And then there's also productivity, obviously by having innovation, having people challenging some of the norms. You can actually then look at improving productivity through, these changes and redesigns of processes. So having a look at, once you've kind of looked at the benefits of bringing diversity is really the question is, how do you start building a program that allows you to kind of access untapped talent? And, my advice is what ones I've built, and I've built just to give you a bit of background, I've built a neurodiversity program, I've built an Indigenous program, and now currently building a veterans program. It really is that you need to really focus on the cohort you want to actually attract. So, and the key part of actually with that cohort of population is trying to really understand it, understand what the barriers are to employment or perceived barriers. And it could be as simple as a job description. So I know from people that the program I've been running for the last 7 years with autistic individuals, job descriptions have been a big barrier. They look at a job description, they go through it, and if they see anything they might not be able to do, they'll completely opt out. So where people that what they call us as being neurotypicals would kind of say, well, I can do about 80% of the job description. Well, I'll apply. So they're the completely opposite. If they can't do 100%, they won't actually apply. So this is one of the challenges within barriers to employment. Again, with looking at women in cyber and women in kind of tech areas, one of the big strong areas is actually giving more information about a day in the life of the role rather than the job description. So females are more interested in what the day of the life is, which is fantastic. And this helps out with really kind of providing an emotional connection to the workplace, and what does the culture look like, and what does really do I do during the day, and how does that really, and does that kind of integrate with my kind of the way I want to work, or how I want to actually integrate my maybe life after work as well. The questions are some of the things you need to think, what strengths do they bring? And strengths maybe not just in technical, could be they're going to be, they have loyalty, therefore they're going to be there for, for a long period of time, or they, it could be as simple as that they might want to do shift work or part-time work, so they can actually provide a surge capability to the organisation or that function. So it's actually working through what strengths they might bring into that area that are different from we have today. So we have a number of, we've built, for example, shift work, and shift work for people, sometimes for some people on the autism spectrum is really good because they actually are sometimes a little bit nocturnal. So we've been able to build a shift work capability around that. So it's actually thinking through that, or it could be that for example that you're using people that are in the the age community, which are or have recently retired. They might only really want to do 2 days a week, and that gives you the ability to maybe do a little bit of overflow work, particularly at certain times of the year. So it's actually getting quite flexible. You have to be flexible in your approach to the human capital to design, and not thinking of just I've got to have 20 FTEs. 20 FTEs could be actually broken up over maybe 30 people. So it's actually being quite flexible in your design of these roles that suit the population. And what I mean by that also is by having flexibility in regards to obviously we now have a lot more flexibility in location, but also having flexibility in hours. Could be amount of leave you're actually providing, but when do they need to work from home? Do they have to work from a secured facility? How can you design the role to actually suit the population? The other one is really creating a safe environment for them to express themselves and learn. So obviously they're going to be coming into an environment which is hasn't really had this type of cohort of population before. So you need to actually create environments where they can learn and express themselves, and also that they're not judged. So they can actually start to actually bring their selves to work, as they say. And also that the people around them also are learning as well about that. Especially particularly with people with disability, there sometimes there are some kind of some stereotypes or assumptions that people make. Establish appropriate support structures, which are kind of critical. So this is going to allow you to kind of ensure that the co-workers, the managers are supported, but also the individuals in the workplace. So go to the next slide. This is just a little bit about the success factors. It's just my experience of what makes the success of building a program. A good executive sponsor, as I mentioned before, understanding your population and cohort you're building for, building a program with them. So I think that's critical. So you can understand how you're actually from the traction to actually sustainment. You can really help them with. And then really kind of be willing to redesign processes and really design jobs and tasks to actually do it. And one thing I've left here is reviewing performance management practices, which I think are sometimes archaic in some places, but it's actually going ahead and reviewing them to actually see if that really is there a better way to actually put some kind of bit more scaffolding around it to really suit the population as well. So example, we've worked with a couple of organisations to build a new performance management tool that's very specific for people on the spectrum, which has been fantastic. So we've actually been, we actually threw out our performance management practice because it really had you had the assumption you had to advocate for yourself, which is most behavioural systems are like that. You have to advocate for yourself, but unfortunately, with a lot of people with disabilities, they have poor advocacy skills initially. Okay, next slide. So if we go to the next slide, yeah. So this is just an example of an attraction. This is called, doing something a bit differently. This is called Genius Armory, which is what they call a mass online open online course. So, and what this is supposed to do, it gives 6 modules. It can be done in 6 hours, and it gives people a sense of what, very easily very sense of what is cybersecurity. This was done with Oz Cyber. And this is very much focused on helping people understand what is cybersecurity. It's really focusing on finding candidates which are in that I don't know area about cyber. So we're kind of looking at that kind of raw talent, getting them interested, and then creating pathways to kind of higher education, or bringing them into kind of executive or some kind of other education courses. That's just a little example. Think about something differently. Probably next slide. This is a non-traditional process. I'm giving you an example of what's been used in kind of a autism at work program. So looking at example, one is a motivational questionnaire to help really people people motivated for this type of work or industry. That really helps kind of really start to screen out very early that their motivation maybe for applying the job could be their parents' motivation or their carers' motivation, or they don't quite understand enough about the actual roles available. So we're trying to go through kind of a motivational questionnaire, some pre-screening, pre-assessment to really understand where they're at in their working ability, going through some, looking at executive functioning, what skills do they have in kind of communication, and also organisation, so where they're at on those things, and also helping. We've also in this process is about kind of helping them with their autism as well. Meaning what I mean by that is they get to understand a little bit about what they are, what is autism, and how does it kind of reflect in the workplace. So helping to educate them. This process has been designed to actually really help move people forward, even if people are not successful in the process. So there's an ethos about the program that every part of the program is supposed to help somebody forward, even if they are unsuccessful. So you can see here there's some technical exercises around social engineering, code breaking, digital investigation, and computer science that eventually kind of really allows us to kind of start streaming people into certain roles. Next slide. This is just a bit of an example of a curriculum that was being built for a program, really to help people, particularly again on the autism spectrum, really about helping them, really get the appropriate skills to have just not only just a job, but have a career. So this is a little bit of a snapshot about what a program is, and the way DXC's built it. But that's kind of you can reach out to me later if you wanted more details with that. But I wanted to give you some kind of idea that just thinking outside the boxes, I think, is critical as well. And what things do you need to kind of build into your kind of work practices to help sustain the talent? And for example, you can see here, some of the things in this kind of program is job awareness, helping with self-determination, helping with self-advocacy. And transition is quite interesting, is helping people move between different job roles and helping people teach that. And there's a number of actually underneath there that this is really becomes an individual development plan, and people are allocated the appropriate curriculum to go through. And that might be as an individual or might be done as a group session. Got a next slide. And this is an employee support tool. This has actually been, give you another example of a tool that's used to help sustain talent. This is actually used at Stanford University and a number of other organisations across the globe. It's called Life Sherpa, and it's really a tool that's been built to help people, really kind of adjust, help them when they're actually in the workplace. So that helps them, go ahead and, particularly finding a bit of a coaching. It's almost an online coaching app, but it also has a number of self kind of paced learning activities in there. So that's kind of giving people the ability to kind of feel like when I'm at work, so what's an interview? How do I actually practice my interview? Preparing for a phone, online interview. So it's kind of, there's a lot of material here just to help kind of existing employees adjust with, with the workplace. And this just gives you another example of what's potentially available, what other organisations are doing. This one actually is quite interestingly being used by a number of large kind of tech firms by really helping the kind of untapped talent come in and then supporting it. Probably next slide I'll show, and this is probably understated a lot, is kind of sustainment. Sustainment is really critical for long-term success, as we all know. But it's really the hardest part. It's really integrating the program into the organisation, making sure the program doesn't become an island. So it starts to integrate with kind of maybe a graduate recruitment program. It could be, starts to integrate with traditional hiring processes. And so you've got to start kind of embedding it into the organisation, learning from successes and challenges, adjusting and redesigning processes. And probably the other thing is really getting and obtaining feedback from the participants. So it's really about going through these iterations to make sure that you're not just saying accessing this untapped talent really just for a once-off, that you are doing this over and over to actually really get the best out of getting into this community.
Michael, that was a fantastic talk. Thank you so much for your time. All right. Well, thank you to everyone that attended.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll do better the next time with our technology. But thank you for bearing with us, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.